Great. I think we're streaming. It looks like we're streaming, but the webpage gave me an error, but that's okay, I suppose. We'll assume we're good. Thanks everybody for joining another episode of the OpenJS Foundation's Cross-Project Council meeting. Today is the 28th of November in the year 2023. Hi. So what where do we start? Announcements?
I have a little one, if you haven't seen it blasted on our social channels. It's Cyber Monday week for Linux Foundation training and certification, of which we have our Node.js training and certification. The bundle's 65% off through December 4th. So if you're thinking about it, now would be a good time.
Cool.
You'll find all the links on the home pages of our websites, the Node website, Node channels, our channels, LinkedIn, all kinds of places. X.
Great. Excellent. Any other announcements?
Yep.
Come on. Yeah.
I got one.
Okay.
It's very exciting. So as many of you may know, the Linux Foundation is rolling out a meeting tool. It's been in use for probably about 6 months, and we've been slowly rolling projects onto it. And I've rolled it out on other projects, and I'd like to start rolling it out here. The board meetings in 2024 will be using it, and I'd like to get the CPC to be using it. So the advantages are it makes a couple things easier. It can do auto recording. It simplifies sharing host keys, so we can designate like a bunch of people as alternates to get the host keys. And so there's a couple advantages there. As a user of LFX meetings, or like what you'll actually encounter, it's really not that much different. I'll invite everyone that's on the CPC private mailing list. So if you're on that mailing list, you'll get an invite. If not, you can message me and I'll add you. It'll also continue to appear on the public calendar. The main difference is that when you click on the meeting link, you'll be presented with a screen that will ask you to either log in with your LFX ID or to proceed as a guest. And then once you do either of those actions, it just launches Zoom like you normally would. So not a huge change. It's been pretty painless on all the other projects I rolled it out on. But yeah, Joe, I can work with you so you understand how it all works. Again, like it's pretty straightforward. And yeah, maybe we could do it before the end of the year or the first CPC meetings in 2024.
And so, because one of the nice things I think about these meetings is that anybody can join. If you join as a guest, what sort of experience is that like? It sounded like it actually funnels you through Zoom. So if you're logged in, you'd already be coming in logged in, or would you?
Yeah. So basically when you click the link, it'll prompt you to log in via LFX or proceed as a guest. It still can be public. So if it's public, you just and you just take the guest route, and then Zoom just opens normally.
And Ben's talking about LFX ID. That's essentially if you've ever logged into or attended any Linux Foundation event, whether it's an OpenJS World or an open source summit or a KubeCon or a webinar, or you've signed up to be on our mailing list, then you essentially have a Linux Foundation email identified with you. And if you don't, or if you've opted out, then you wouldn't. You could proceed as a guest, or you could just create one.
And so as a guest, I just want to make sure I understand this, because to try and minimize friction for new folks and stuff. If you come in as a guest, but you're already logged in as yourself in Zoom, do you come in as a guest? Like, does your name show up, I guess, is essentially it, or do you need to kind of?
I believe so, yes. So like your Zoom name would still be the same, yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I just want to make sure we don't add more friction if possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And now's a good time too, if you want to check to see if you do have an email address. Maybe you want to make sure it's the correct email address, because I think, like Joe, you probably have 3, and that's probably fine, but easier to have,
I'll clean up my accounts.
Yeah, And in full transparency, one of the reasons that they're doing this isn't that relevant for the CPC, but it is elsewhere, is we're looking at attendance for like board meetings and things, so that we know, or it's easier for us to know if, say, a board member hasn't attended in 6 months or so, and maybe there's a reason why the ED should reach out to them. So we don't really, attendance is not really a thing we care about on the CPC, but that is something that we're leveraging this for in other areas.
How about for guests? So like I would probably just always log in as a guest. Is it gonna still show you as having, like, you just get a summary? Is that the way it works? with the
Yeah, that's
names?
correct. Yeah. Again, like for the purposes of this, it's really not that important for us to have like metrics on who's attending or not. For other meetings, it is. Yeah.
Tierney?
What's the information that LFID collects? Because it's like very clearly populated a bunch of shit that I've never given it. And I am super not a fan of like a bunch of data being scraped and then being forced to use that for OpenJS stuff.
Yeah, that's fair. It's probably a good conversation to have outside of this meeting, only because I don't actually know all the things that it's doing. But I can poke around and talk to you on Slack about what LFXID is actually doing.
Yeah, I saw a demo of some stuff because I think if they have like say 3 Robin Gins, then they may have my LinkedIn to identify which Robin Gin it is. So I think they have a service for that because I had asked on that regard. So, but
Yeah.
I think you should be able to control your profile and log in and make any changes.
It currently congealed both my current job and my previous job, and also I can't go to the edit profile page. It just dies.
Oh, that's weird. Okay, we'll work on it.
I'm not super
information.
enthralled by this.
Yeah. We have multiple profiles of people when they change jobs, and it's messy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I tend to agree. Like, I think one thing that I wish it was a little bit more transparent about is just, and it doesn't do this, but having a lot more opt-ins for some of this information. Like a lot of the information is public, but you shouldn't be surprised when you go to your profile page and see information that you didn't know was there. So I'm providing feedback on that as well.
Yeah.
Some additional feedback is,
Yeah.
I had several of them, and I don't know if I ever figured out how to get them combined. And like, I get charged every year for my support of the JavaScript Landia, but I'm not sure I could even get to where I would need to say no. So anyway, it's just not as easy as it could be. I'll if you're giving feedback, that's just something else to pass along.
Yeah, that's fair. Yes, I am also a JavaScript Landia supporter, and so I can help you with that as well.
We're also having a Linux Foundation all hands where there'll be days dedicated to this, where we're gonna get more information, learn it, and provide feedback. So yeah, all good stuff.
Yeah, and I'll also be honest, like I've held off on implementing this quite a while so that a lot of the bugs could be worked out. So it's in a much better place than it was when they initially tried rolling it out. So that's good as well. Okay, Toby.
Sorry, go ahead, Toby.
Yeah, no, I'm just curious, what are we getting out of this? I mean, what are we doing this for? Because I'm right now, I just hear like suddenly we have to use a login, and then we still get to Zoom, and like,
yeah,
how like, why are we doing this?
Yes, right? Here is the main advantage. The main advantage is that Joe or any other person who needs to run this meeting in Joe's absence does not have to log in under a shared Zoom account. They will just be able to access a host key by logging into LFX, and then they can run the meeting as is.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm not super enthralled to be giving up like privacy stuff over making it easier to start a meeting. I'm not super enthralled about that.
And I think the questions that Joe asked at the beginning of this, to me, if like this helps people running the meeting exchange keys more easily, that's great. As long as a result, it doesn't add a burden on everyone else. Yeah. Also to Tierney's point, right? And so if that's the case, then that's entirely fine. if that's not the case, and I find it a problem. And in either cases, I don't like using the slippery slope argument too much, but I will. I just want all of us to make sure that we are aware of what we're trying to achieve, and not like kind of start slipping into, and now we require this, and now we require that, and et cetera, right?
Yeah. That's fair.
So just, yeah.
Let me do this. How about I do like a real walkthrough with Joe about, since Joe is the primary person that runs these meetings, of exactly how this works, what it would feel like, what the advantages are, what it looks like for creating the host keys and all that stuff, just so he understands it. And then we regroup, and maybe Joe would have a recommendation on whether or not we should proceed or not.
I'm even curious, and that sounds good, Ben, but I'm even curious if we could have a hybrid solution. You know, if it launches a Zoom meeting, is it always a unique Zoom meeting, or is it always launch the same Zoom, URL? And if it's the same one, then we can just do a hybrid. If you're going to host, you go through this way. If you're just a guest or attendee, and you don't, then you just go the other way.
I think they're trying to add some consistency across the PM org at the Linux Foundation too. So there's not like bespoke solutions for every group. So
yeah, but all you're doing with this is just adding something else in the chain. So it's not really,
it's burdening us for something that is not our problem.
Let's do this, just because I don't want to spin on this too much, is let me go through it in depth with Joe so he can really see how it works and the details, and then we'll come back with a rec with a pro and con for more discussion next time.
Yeah. Okay, sounds good. And I think that you should do that not only with me, but also perhaps with Toby, which leads me to asking again, do we have any announcements?
But this was announced like unofficially last week, and so I think it's entirely announced at this point.
We typically do a blog, but yeah, Toby, congratulations, was elected vice chair of the Cross Project Council. And Joe Seppi, congratulations, was elected to the board of directors for our third seat. Whoop, whoop.
Thank you. Great. Yay. Let's see if this works. Does this work?
Yeah.
See this whole conversation about making absolutely sure this was still using vanilla Zoom, etc. had nothing to do with privacy. It was any concerns about the community whatsoever. Joe just wanted to make sure that he could still run his own thing, was like all of this stuff working properly. Now, I understand.
Yes, and we're talking privacy live on YouTube, by the way.
Which is what YouTube is for.
Yeah,
that's right. That's pretty awesome.
Cool. All right, well, we'll work through that. We'll see. How it feels and stuff. All right, great. And so what were we doing again? Oh yeah, meeting.
A lot of cool stuff.
Yeah, lots of stuff. So Toby very helpfully, and I must have maybe missed the meeting because I feel like he did this a while ago, updated the template, and now we have some great links to label specific items to ask about. So the first one is waiting on the board. The Blue Oak, evaluate Blue Oak license is waiting on the board. Any updates on that? I know
that is going through the OSI process for new license. It was submitted 2 weeks ago, a little 2+ weeks ago. Louis Villa on behalf of the authors, and did it on behalf of OpenJS's request, which was lovely. So that's a 30-day process, and then there's a 30-day process after that. So it should be a 60-day process to whether or not the OSI review board accepts that. And then once they do, then our board will vote.
Cool.
Seem very supportive. Yeah, so super smooth. Thank you, Louis Villa from Tidelift, for doing all the great work and for the author support. Pretty cool.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. The next batch of issue labels is waiting on legal info. We've got 4 of them here. I don't know if there's any updates on those. can share a link to this if it's easier for folks. This is develop process for
We
OpenJS.
do. I summarized them for our legal counsel who has said that the LF has solved many of these. So I have it into the legal person at the LF to review. We've discussed shortly and she's reviewing. I think there's what, 4 or 6 of them that she's looking at. 4, yeah. So Joanna Lee said she'd be happy to take a look. So she has those.
Excellent. I don't know.
I do want to just provide an update on the OpenJS purchasing certificates or renewing certificates. I'll update the issue here, but we did purchase DigiCert certificates for both Electron and Node.js for 3 years, and we also got Electron Apple signing certificates. So that process worked okay. I need to write up some documentation on that for future reference. And I also need to talk with IT about taking that responsibility over as part of the Sovereign Tech Fund initiative. That's not going to be a problem. So all the hard stuff on that's done.
Great. Excellent. And then the last one, because I think one of them there's no issues with the label, but the waiting on staff update is the IP policy license exemption request from May 11th, 2022. I don't know if this is you know, something we should. It's clearly kind of dropped off the radar, so maybe we should figure out what's going on with that one for next time. Unless anybody has any input on it, any information.
Wait, I'm trying to figure out which one that is.
It's the loopback license exemption. I think there's like, is there like an artistic license if I remember correctly?
Are you looking at PRs? Because I'm kind of going through our lists on our agenda today. I'm losing track of where you are.
We're still in the staff updates section.
Oh.
So there's the second of 3 links there. The third one is waiting on, sorry, the second one is waiting on staff update. And that one is the IP policy license exemption request for loopback. And I remember looking at this a long time ago.
Yeah, my recollection from this is there was an exemption that had gone through the board, or that there was some exemption. Something was up, and we were waiting for to make sure that this was closed to be able to close the issue. I remember having this very discussion with you, actually, Joe, but it was a very long time ago.
I'd have to go back and
Like
look.
a year.
Yeah.
So it would be good to know if that was done so we can close it.
Yeah. Okay. So let's let's dig into this one and see if we can figure out where this has landed. Okay. And yeah. All right. Well, let's just do that. We'll work on that. All right, cool. Waiting on website update, I think is not, there's no issues for that one. So we can just dig into the agenda unless there's any, oh, sorry, did I jump over the boarding, waiting on the board? No, I didn't, did I? That was the evaluate Blue Oak license, but I didn't ask if there was any board meeting updates. I know that the meeting's in what, a couple weeks, so.
I think there was, the last meeting was supposed to be this Friday, and I'm assuming that there was no meeting for obvious reasons.
It was, but it was prior. Hold on, let me look. My browser just shut down. So. But we do have, it was on the 17th. So it was a couple of weeks ago. And we can share that deck once we sort of clean it up a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, great. So we can jump into the agenda. The first item is revisit emeritus stage definitions. Ben, you opened this up in October.
I think we talked about this last time too. But yeah, part of the STF infrastructure project is helping to support sunsetting / emeritus projects. And so I looked at what our documentation was, and before I pass things on to our IT folks to take a look at, I want to just be sure that this was up to date and didn't need any tweaks and folks are still happy with it before we move on. There were a couple things that I thought could have been clearer, at least for me as a newcomer, that I outlined in the issue. But yeah, happy to discuss. Happy to also, if there's folks that are particularly interested in this, I'm happy to work with folks in a working session on this as well.
Okay.
So I'd definitely be interested in joining a working session on this. When you do one, to me, there's no sense of urgency there. But there might be on your end. So, depending on whatever timeline you have. So,
There's
I'll
some,
let you drive that.
yeah, there's some that are, kind of obvious, and the maintainers have said, oh yeah, we're ready. But instead of having them trickle throughout the year, it would be nice to have more of a definition so we can just get started. So urgent is maybe too strong of a word, but yeah, we have some milestones around it too in our which we can adjust, but.
Let me
Just
go ahead, Toby.
No, I just had a quick question, just to be clear. Is this about the meta problem of like the essentially like structure of how do we do this? Or is it about specific projects, or is it about both?
I think it has to be about both, because I think, the meta process informs if there are projects that need to be sunset.
Yeah. And just discussions with STF folks, I think the intent is the meta as well, not the obvious ones, but when something is clearly abandoned, but hasn't indicated it's officially abandoned, what do we do? What's our policy? And we had talked about that in our last meeting, right?
Well,
yeah, so happy to join.
Yeah, well, I'm wondering, because we have a lot of stuff for working sessions, and I wonder if we should just do an ad hoc for this one.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Any other volunteers besides Toby? Oh, Robin.
Yeah, invite me as optional.
Okay, I'll play music. It'll be fun, I promise.
Oh, that's great.
There will be cats. There will be cats.
Yeah.
Paula's been really interested in getting involved in stuff too, and so if you want to ping her as well, then
yeah.
All right, great. So
what should we do with this issue? Should we remove it from the cross? I mean, should we remove the label? Should we
I think it's
change it to a working session?
I'm okay with leaving it. And Ben, if you want to just drop a comment in there once you kind of get sort of things rolling in terms of like scheduling a working session. And then we can just double back on it in 2 weeks or whenever. And yeah,
cool.
Sounds good. All right, great. Thanks, y'all. This next one, I think we can close. This is ask for additional travel budget. Michael opened this a while ago. I think the request was made. Request was essentially, I don't know if denied is the right word, but basically, get your house in order, and then or we can evaluate things on an ad hoc basis, but also try to get the process figured out before asking for more money. We only have a month left anyway, so I don't know if there's
theoretically your definition of more. Our budget is down this year. We've had some members downgrade their membership, so our overall budget's down, but the CPC budget is flat from last year. So in a way, since you didn't go down, you're theoretically up a little, but and then I think still, we do have reserves, and if something's very critical, there's always the board was willing to take things on a case-by-case basis.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. It can just be closed.
Okay. Just kind of checking this here. So I'll just say, cool. I will say that and close with a comment. Board says case by case basis for remainder of year. Great. Next up is 1174. This is elections and transparency. I see, Sarah, you just dropped a comment.
Yeah, the next action item is on me. I'm gonna try to get to this week to just update some language around when we hold elections. So I'll let folks know when that's ready.
Sarah, if useful, I sort of did an audit of like all of our elections. So when we elect folks to the board, when we do the CPC elections, sort of just have that out in a spreadsheet. And I spoke with Robin about it yesterday to see if we could kind of rationalize like some dates. I'm happy to share that with you.
Yeah, that would be really helpful.
Okay, I'll do that right now.
Great.
Okay. And just one last quick thing. This is a new kid.
Ah,
Okay, great. Sorry for the
adorable.
interruption.
How old? I'm curious.
3 months.
Wow, that's exciting.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the name?
Pequeña.
Oh,
All right, sorry for the interruption.
Cool. And you know, let me know if we want to do an ad hoc on the election stuff too. I would love to get that stuff sorted. And so I'd be open to any sort of impromptu meeting or ad hoc meeting. Be cool. Revamping the travel fund is the next item on the agenda, 1147. Toby's got this really great description and write-up here. There's a working session summary. Where are we at on this one? And maybe Ben, would you be the person that I would ask about that? We working on the form. I remember we were making progress.
yeah. So the form is done except for the DEI section. I asked our events team about the questions they asked speakers, and so I have those. I have an outstanding question about any storage requirements or data retention policies surrounding the collection of that information. So once I have that and I'm comfortable that we can abide by any of those rules, I'll add, there's just a placeholder right now in the form for that section. I'll just add those in. The rest of the form can totally be reviewed. It basically took all the comments that we had from the Google Doc and just made it into something that you could go through. And so I believe that issue is up to date and has a link to the form.
Okay, great. Yeah, and for folks that wasn't clear, like we kind of worked on the guts of the form for a while in a Google Doc, and Ben just translated that into an actual form so you can kind of see it in action. So great. It'd be great to, I guess, once you get clarity on that last item, Ben, then we can kind of move forward on that. Toby?
Yeah, and then the second part of this whole thing will be on the rubric and deciding how we weight all of these different things. And that probably will require a working session, and we should probably do this before the end of the year so we have actually something in place for next year, because if not, we're going to be back in the same story again, and we don't want to do that at all, right?
Agreed 1000%. Should we just take a moment now and see if we want to use the working session next week for that? I think that would be a good use of our time. I know, Toby's made great progress on the code of conduct related work as well, which is one of the other, those are like the two top things for me is
I actually don't think that we need a working session on the code of conduct thing next week.
Okay.
Unless, I mean, a bunch of folks have made comments and reviews already, and like I didn't hear anything from anyone that was like, we have to rip this open and have a big discussion. And so I'm inclined to believe that it's probably not going to be necessary, and we can move forward with this. Have the working session on the travel fund stuff next week, and then get some more work in the COC stuff, and then use maybe the last working session on that.
Sounds like a good plan. All right, great.
I have a question about that.
Oh, yeah, please.
Given that we're in this like intermediary phase where we have like this process that's not fully implemented, and we have this proposed process? What's the actual process, the like practical process that is true for right now? Like what happens right now?
For travel funds?
No, for the CSC policy stuff.
What's currently there?
Yeah. But we haven't fully implemented what's currently there.
So I'm sorry, what's the question, Attorney?
Given that we haven't fully implemented what's currently there, I'm curious what the actual process is currently.
I think it's the same that it's always been. I mean,
Would-
you know, I think the main thing that we changed was trying to work out a moderation panel, which
Mhm.
we got stalled on.
Mhm.
But I think all the other processes haven't changed. We're cleaning some of the stuff up in terms of like we had multiple reporting addresses, like an
Mhm.
escalation, and so some of that stuff, I'm not sure if that's cleaned up in your PR, Toby, or if that's the, I remember you.
It is, yes.
So.
So
So
my
I-
understanding
I-
is that goes to the CPC then, right?
I'd have to
Like
look.
reports go to the CPC in the absence of the panel being completed.
No, the
So-
interim panel, the interim panel has been Joe and Kylie and myself
Hmm.
until we have the, selection
So the-
process, so to
Was
speak.
that
for
something
the-
that the CPC agreed to?
A while back,
Yes.
Okay.
yes.
I must not have been there for that.
I
Um,
don't think you were.
Okay. Is that documented anywhere?
It is. I've worked on so much of the in-between stuff that I don't know what the actual stuff is.
Yeah, that's fair.
Hold on, let me have a look.
So I
Cool.
just dropped a link to the section for the Code of Conduct panel. In the Foundation Code of Conduct requirements.
Yeah.
That's a specific part.
And that's not documented there.
Well, Robin and Kylie, yes. And then me particularly not in this document, no.
Okay, cool. I just want to make sure I understood.
Yeah, and I would love to get this all cleaned up so it's all very easy to go to one place, sort everything out. And I feel like we've been in this sort of intermediate state for a while. So very close to being done with that. Yeah, was just reminded of Ben Hutton opening the update to the Code of Conduct like 2 years ago, it feels like, which I think really kind of kicked off a lot of this. Okay, cool. So we were on the revamping the travel fund.
I mean, it's weird because I'm absolutely sure that we have this somewhere written down. So I'm very confused. I'll find it.
Yeah, definitely. Please let me know.
This is weird.
Yeah, I thought so too, but I didn't see it at quick glance.
Even
okay,
just like a recording of that meeting or wherever where that was discussed.
we can look through the minutes to try and figure that out.
Yep.
So next working session, we will work on revamping the travel fund, which is issue 1147. Okay, so that's kind of where I think I left off. But that's a good the conversation is a good segue into pull request 1135. Toby mentioned this earlier. This is there's been a lot of work done on this recently. There's been a lot of comments, which is great as well. And so I don't know if there's much to discuss about it here, but I certainly want to at a minimum encourage folks to take a look at the work that Toby did recently, kind of restructuring and getting some of the things
So I
documented. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I do think it would be worth like having a small conversation about it, just so people know what's up. I don't know if we can spare the time right now and like sort of try to time bound it to some degree.
Yeah, let me look at the, one quick second. I think that there are only 3 more items on the
You want
4.
to go through the 3 more items quickly and then come back to this, see what time we have left?
Yeah, let's just do that. Let's do that. The next one is Code of Conduct Plan of Action. So that's those 2 are related. The item after that is standard on collab space over working groups, which I think really just needs the work to be done.
It does, and actually some of the COC stuff, in terms of like reorganizing how we split stuff, actually is going to help there too.
Great, great. Unless anybody has comments on that one, I will move on to the next one, which is nonviolent communication, strategic workplace conflict resolution. We should maybe even have waiting on a staff update for this one too.
Yeah, that's on me to get the proposal.
So waiting on
Waiting on Robin.
This issue is waiting. Yeah, okay. So I added that label. And then the last one, create some documentation web page to describe collaboration of OpenJS model. You know, working together. I know Robin, you and Matteo worked on this. It was being reviewed.
And we have a draft. We're close. Yeah.
Okay, great, great. All right, so those are the items on the agenda. We already figured out next working session. So let's jump back to the code of conduct work, Toby.
That was fast, wonderful. So the pull request is in 1135. I'm just going to put it here. A lot of you made comments already. Thank you. So as you all know, this has been a huge mess for a very long time. It was kind of the governance equivalent of spaghetti code. And it was really, we had like a lot of technical depth around this, and it made it really difficult. This is what I tried to explain, I think, 2 weeks ago. It made it really difficult to sort of make progress when moving something. And we just had an example of this, like literally 5 minutes ago, when we were like looking in literally 4 different places to figure out where the names of the current panelists are. And like everything was kind of like this. And so that was a real blocker to make progress, and it was very hard when trying to unblock this to figure out how to restructure things. And we had a working session the other day where Paula and Robin and I think Joe, who else was in that session? Ben, were you there? Well, everyone was kind of saying, well, we need to focus on something small and fix it. And I was just like, yes, I agree. I've tried that. It's very difficult. It's sort of the spaghetti code. And I also, I mean, you know, we all know the tendency that like every engineer might have to just essentially boil the ocean and refactor all the things and start from scratch, et cetera, et cetera. Sometimes it's hard to assess what's the right decision and what's the over-engineering decision. So I kind of went back to look at what the state of that pull request was in, and if it could be salvaged, or if we really had to start from scratch again to do something smaller. And it actually wasn't that bad at all, right? And the conversation really helped me to figure out sort of like how to break down governance-like material the same way we would break down code in like an MVC, or like have the same kind of like mental model to know where things go, right? And so what I did in there, and what I think might be a very useful framework to use across different similar issues in our work, is to split essentially using like sort of like a why, who, what, how kind of framework. Everything that is the why and the what, so ends up in policy. So the mission and what exactly why you're doing something and what that implies. So these are like sort of like high level things, like you have a privacy policy and why you have that privacy policy, for example. And basically, what are you trying to achieve with that privacy policy goes into policy. The implementation details, the how, sort of, well, you're careful about privacy by just using, making sure that like in a COC report, the names of like people that are reporting the issues, et cetera, are kept private. So you use, I don't know, like a special Slack channel for this, for example. That's the how it goes in process, right? And anything that has to do with the who, so which group is organizing this, is a charter. And so I split the COC stuff into a charter for the code of conduct team, right? That Paula's going to work on. Policy, which is the high-level things that we want to make sure happen, and all of the process of like how things are done in a separate document that will be owned and managed by the COC team. But that split also makes it very clear to understand which document sort of like belongs to which group. So the CPC makes the policy, right? The high level of how we want COC to be managed, right? And it delegates the authority to managing those through the charter to the COC team, and that is then responsible for managing the processes of how that actually happens. And so that's the organization that I put in place in that pull request. And to me, it felt very natural and worked really well just to know where to put stuff, right? And using these very basic things of, if it's a what or a why, it's in the policy. If it's the charter stuff, if the who, it's in the charter stuff, and everything about the how goes into the process. So that's how this is structured. And then essentially, what this pull request does is not much more than refactoring stuff and reorganizing stuff so it's clear and there are no like overlap or weird gaps in the whole thing, right? I know there's a couple of outstanding questions. I made some decisions that felt like they were right about separating escalation from appeal. And then there was a few questions around these as to, do we use different email addresses for all of these? Or do we use the same one? So some fairly implementation specific details. And that's essentially it. And then everything about the new COC team and how that will work. Now there's a home for where that should happen. It's in the charter and the processes. And that's work that Paula offered to help drive. I believe we should pull in that pull request as is, and then let the more details about the specific charter for the COC panel team to be written like as a separate second pull request. Was that vaguely clear? Yeah. Do you have questions?
I was in the meeting with you when we discussed that, so it's all
Yeah,
for
same.
folks who this is new to, does this make sense?
I'm gonna say, like, reading the first few bits, there it reads as the OpenJS Foundation tells the projects how to, like, basically is ultimately responsible for all of its projects COC handling. And that's not something I think that was discussed or agreed with the projects in the past. I'm not saying it's wrong or right, just saying, like, the way I just read it is like the foundation owns this, and, like, for example, appeals will be handled by the foundation. And that's something I know, like, one of the collaborators, some instances years ago, that was a contentious thing with the Node project. It was like, you know, the projects need to opt into that in terms of that being a solution. So I'm not saying right or wrong, just saying that's one thing that probably needs to be clarified or agreed. So Toby, go ahead.
Yeah, briefly, I agree that there was no appeal. There was no formal appeal process. There was an escalation that was sort of, kind of an appeal in some cases, unclear, right? But the rest of it was essentially spelt out the way it is spelt out now, just in bits and pieces all over the place. But like, there was nothing, essentially the way it works is bylaws move COC management to the CPC, and then the CPC kind of like had all these floating policies and processes about it, which essentially said, projects who abide by these rules can run this stuff by themselves, but then there is like kind of an escalation path. And so essentially there was no appeal, but it wasn't clear whether escalation, like where the escalation exactly was. And so that's kind of sort of clarifying this. So I would say this outlines this like crystallizes, like it, by putting it clear on paper, it crystallizes points of contentions that were essentially fuzzy beforehand. So I think you're making a very good point by sort of like pointing the finger on, hey, that actually means this.
Yeah,
And
like
I
it
think
was-
that beforehand, there was kind of like half of the folks believed it meant this, and the other half believed it meant that, and everyone was happy. So maybe,
I
you know,
can agree
maybe
with
we should
that,
put some
yes.
fuzzy in there to make people happy again. I don't know.
No, like I think it could be fine. Like we could go to all the projects and they could say, yeah, that's the way it should be. But I think in the past it was kind of like an opt-in. You know, you could say, yeah, our escalation path is this, but like we didn't say projects were bound to that. And like you said, probably lots of fuzziness. Some people probably thought maybe it was, some people thought not. So I think actually being this like makes it, this says the foundation basically owns this and delegates it to the CPC, and then projects can get it delegated to them if the CPC agrees they're doing a good job, right? That's kind of the inverse of where it started, which was like projects had their own, and like then the foundation tried to sort of like bring that together and like maybe start out by like sharing experiences. And so I think you characterize my point accurately in that like this may not be what was agreed in the past, but there was lots of fuzziness, and it's better to have it spelled out if this is what we think it should be, right? Just my comment was we should go to the projects, like we shouldn't just pass this. We should make sure the projects understand it. And you know, so we don't find out later on they're going, what? I didn't know that's what was written down, right? So there just might be some socialization education along the way.
Yeah. Go ahead, Toby.
That's a great point. Thank you for bringing it up.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's an important one too. Let's work on that little section there. For sure. Tierney?
Yeah, I'm just reading through the different documents here, and I'm confused because it looks like there's a link to a COC team charter. That document doesn't exist either in the repo normally or in this PR. And it says that that's how the team membership is defined. So like how someone would join it.
It exists, but it's empty, mostly empty. Is it not in the pull request?
It's not in the pull request, or at least I mean control
Are you
Fing.
sure?
Control Fing for COC team charter brings up the content, but not the actual file. Like it brings up a link to it, but it doesn't bring up the file is in the
so I might have screwed up the
This is what's in the PR that talks about membership terms.
You're right, it's not.
Yeah.
This is so weird.
There's
Yeah, so it
COC
should come up.
process for COC team.
But yeah, the line
What
106.
the hell did so I probably pushed some local changes and forgot to push them. They're minor, but essentially the one that is called, this is so bizarre. The one that is called COC process for COC team is now COC team charter. And it's actually, yeah. So the only thing that I forgot, so I essentially forgot the one that, I have to rename that file. That's the only thing that's missing from it. So, and the content of the charter is not there because this is upcoming work from Paula that we needed to have a placeholder place for.
Okay.
There is a draft of what it's going to look like, but it's not like formalized in there.
That needs to get in this PR before we land it, right?
It's a good question. I mean, like,
put it a different way, I am blocking this PR until that lands. Specifically
that's
because
that's your
yeah,
prerogative,
yeah.
and the reason I'm kind of like meh about
Yeah.
it is the whole thing is meh already.
Yeah.
You know,
Mhm.
and so I'm like, whatever at this point. Whatever unblocks us is
Yeah.
like my preferred option. So you know that's where I sit. But like you know, you entirely have that prerogative, and
Totally.
it's a valid point.
The specific reasoning why is that I believe one of the files that got deleted actually defines how we do membership selection, and that was something that
No, there's none.
there should be for the COCP, not for there should be. I've read that document multiple times. I'm very certain that exists.
I
In fact,
will
I think it's
agree.
the one that linked earlier.
I wrote the original, and it, you know, I think one thing that is important is to have clarity on how the panel gets selected.
Yeah.
And the original version way back when basically said, we will have this makeup. It didn't name people, but it would be like, you know, we're going to have the executive director. We are going to have one representative from, you know, optionally from major projects or whatever. Like, so, you know, I don't remember what it was, but that is kind of an important part, I think, is like this board who's going to make the appeal decisions. How do you like you want to have that be clear, and so people read that and say, oh yeah, that's the right people to make those decisions, and that's an important part of the overall process.
I
I
believe
totally
that
agree. I just felt I had left them in somewhere. I think they're in the process thing
I
where
think
they
it
were
might be in
before.
the code of conduct repo is where that's actually linked or where that's defined. I could be wrong, but I know that is
Oh,
defined somewhere.
so if that's somewhere in a different repository, then I didn't even know that existed. Then yes,
It's
it is
publicly
not part of
archived.
that thing for sure, for
Yeah.
sure.
Maybe not.
But I mean,
Because I don't see it.
like,
Yeah.
we don't have. I mean, we don't
Yeah.
have to. We don't have to have. Your point is well taken.
Yeah.
Your point is, we don't want this in there until it's complete. You
Yeah.
know, that's entirely. That's a fair position to hold. You don't have to actually even support it with, you know, any kind of reasoning behind it.
Yeah.
Like, it's an entirely fair position. You know?
The big thing, the reason I do want to give, even though I don't need to give reasoning, is I want to make sure that we have a pathway for new people to join, so it's not like random and like some people join, some people don't, or whatever, and also that everyone in it is like up to that standard that we put
No,
forth.
I entirely agree, and just I'm sorry to cut you here.
You're
No, I
good.
know that you know, but I mean
Yeah.
the thing is, like, we literally have all of that work cut out in an
Okay.
issue somewhere that's linked,
Cool.
right?
Right.
And it just needs like someone to, well, Paula kind of said, I'm gonna do this and bring it in there and write it out. And
Yeah.
so we know where it belongs, except I don't have the right name for the file. But you know, small detail here. But outside of that, like, I think the point stands. And so, you know, that's something that we need to do. And then the second point is, do we want to go talk? How do we go talk to existing projects about this? Do we only talk to the ones that have opted in already to actually have their own COC? Do we believe that the fact, like, what if there are representatives of those projects and they're all in the CPC? Is that enough, et cetera? Like, how do we manage this so that we don't stay another 6 months trying to run after people and like staying that kind of like limbo in between states that like is not great, to put it mildly.
Yeah, no, totally. That makes sense.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it's you raise a very good point, Tierney, and whether it's in this PR or not, I think it makes sense to have that ready before we move forward on all of this. But I think the reason, part of the reason why I'm comfortable is that I know Paul is already working on it, so we won't hopefully have to wait too long. Whether we jam it in this PR or just have a second, you know, another PR. Although I guess we need to land this PR to get that file. So whatever, we'll work that out. We'll get that in there.
I mean, she can either work off of that, like do a pull request against that pull request. That's entirely against that branch. That's entirely doable. Or we could just be added to that pull request. That would work too. Like there's lots of different ways to manage this. And I think we have the right feedback from the CPC to move forward. And it is 9 p.m. Top of the hour. And so I think we should just go and clarify asynchronously how we reach out and get that process running.
Sounds good. All right,
Thank
great.
you. Very great feedback. Thank you, folks.
No, and thanks for all your work on that, Toby.
Yeah.
Thank you,
yeah,
Toby.
Thanks, everybody. Cool. Great meeting. See you all very soon. Have a nice day.